football game week. Prep started yesterday. I was watching you with Rich Eisen, and when you said they gave Caleb the playbook and started the install in March, and Eisen's ready, like, what? that has them, I think, primed to get off to a quicker start than maybe a rookie quarterback usually does. Is that fair?
Yeah. You know what's weird about that is, like, I said that to Rich at the end of July, and I don't know, like, someone in Chicago must have picked it up, because all of a sudden, like, I got all of these likes, all these notifications on my phone about this many people liked the post on Instagram or whatever. So somehow someone got a hold of it as if I had said it yesterday.
Right. I was like, I thought Albert said that like when camp opened.
Long summer. I said that at the end of July. Yeah, that's right. But that's all right. Someone repurposed it. That's okay. It's obviously all still the truth and all still a factor in what's gone on here, and I think the Bears, again, deserve credit for accelerating the process. And part of that was forced, right? Like, so, I think Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus wanted to get ahead of this and wanted to be in a position where they'd be able to move Justin Fields at the beginning of free agency. Now, obviously, didn't exactly play out that way. But because they had accelerated the process, because they did their vetting of Caleb Williams really early, they came to a quicker decision that, yeah, this is the guy. This guy's different than everybody else. And, once they came to that conclusion, now all of a sudden, okay, how do we allot our time? And the right way to do it for them was, if we're planning on starting him and we're not this sort of, startup here. We've been here for 3 years. And so we're not going to bring in, a middle of the road guy to hold the fort for half the season. We need to have a really good starting quarterback right away. It made sense to accelerate the process with him. And so, again, for anybody who didn't hear it, and I think I've been over it a few times on your show, right? But
yes.
They put in the terminology and on the formations and the cadence and some of that stuff and I'm trying to remember all of it, but they put in that stuff, and I wrote a whole story on it in August too on the site in the Zoom meetings, and then they worked on him getting in and out of a huddle at the 30 visit, and so by the time they got around to bringing him in the building for the rookie mini camp in May, he already had a pretty good baseline of what the offense was going to look like. So the onboarding was very aggressive and began much earlier than it does for most rookie quarterbacks.
Albert, we were looking at the NFC and just trying to figure out how the Bears can get into the playoffs. Do you see the Bears being one of the top 7 teams in the NFC?
I think it's possible. I think they're lucky to be in the NFC. It's funny. I'm doing this quarterback poll where I reach out to over 100 guys, GMs, head coaches, offensive coordinators, quarterbacks coaches, personnel directors, and just ask them who they think the top 5 quarterbacks are going to be at the end of the year. And a lot of comments I got, after guys went through this exercise, is oh, wow, they're all AFC. A lot of guys had all 5 of their quarterbacks in the AFC. And I think it sort of illustrates the imbalance and power there is in the league right now, where, you have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and now Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert. I'm probably missing somebody here, right? Because there are so many of them. It's a gauntlet. CJ Stroud, it's a gauntlet in the AFC, and the NFC, it's a little easier to sneak into the playoffs as a 6 or 7 seed. So, there are a bunch of teams. The Bears are one of them that I think have a chance to come up and surprise people and get into the bracket. The Bears would be one, the Cardinals, the Seahawks. I think there are other teams out there that could surprise some people and make it in the NFC. But part of that, again, is due to the fact that a lot of the strength of the league is in the other conference.
In terms of looking at the Tennessee Titans, they're rolling in here. The Bears are 4.5-point favorites. I'm not asking you to handicap the game from a gambling perspective, but take us through your thoughts on what the Titans are rolling in here.
So, obviously, they've reset a lot of things, and I think they're in the midst of a pretty extensive rebuild right now. So, what does that mean? Well, the Mike Vrabel teams made the playoffs a few times, got to an AFC title game, and in time aged out. So like some of the guys they had there that were, really kind of the tone setters for the entire program, Taylor Lewan, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, those guys are gone now, right? So they're building around a different group of players, and they're young in a lot of spots. So, Peter Skoronsky and J.C. Latham on the offensive line, first-year guy, second-year guy, right? The receiver group, they bring in Calvin Ridley as sort of a stopgap because I believe he's either 29 or 30 years old, so he's a little older, right? On the defensive side, they're going to be relying on young players all over the place. Yes, they have Simmons in the middle of that defense, and Jeffrey Simmons is one of the best players in all of football, but they're very young everywhere else. So I think that's the first thing you notice is that this is a team going through a very extensive rebuild, probably where the Bears were a couple of years ago. The other thing that you need to know is they are trying to get an answer on their young quarterback, right? So part of that is, is going and bringing in a Ridley and bringing back DeAndre Hopkins and, signing Tony Pollard over from Dallas, like where it's like, okay, we're rebuilding, but we also need to figure out if Will Levis is the guy. Because if he's not, and we have a high pick next year, then we're probably going to have to take one. So, and even in that way, I guess they're sort of where the Bears were, right? When the Bears had to find out with Justin Fields.
Right.
So I think, people in Chicago will probably see some parallels to where the Titans are now and where the Bears have been the last couple of years.
Albert Breer joins us every Tuesday as we talk Bears in the NFL right here on Cap and J Hood. Albert, you're going to love this. You just wrote recently about Aaron Rodgers, how he opens up to rehabbing his injury. This is, by the way, go to SI.com and read Albert. He just wrote about this a week ago. My partner here to my right loves the Jets out of the AFC.
I have the Jet going to the Super Bowl.
It's ridiculous.
Okay. I don't have the stomach to do that, but I think they're in the running. And I would tell you right now, where the Jets are reminds me of where the Buccaneers were in 2020. And what I mean by that is they've got the older quarterback who's a superstar, has been a superstar. And, you're not maybe like 100% sure what you're going to get from him, but they don't need him to be Superman. And like when I went and saw that team, I really like how aggressively they attacked, fixing the offensive line and going and bringing in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses and Olu Fashanu, and then John Simpson over from Baltimore. And then the defensive line looks terrifying with, 7 former first-round picks up there. I just don't see a hole on their roster. There's not like this, not anything where you look at it and say like, okay, like they need to fix that. Like they're good. So, I think at baseline, like even with like B+ like plays from Aaron Rodgers, they should be a playoff team in the AFC, and that's saying plenty because the AFC, like we said earlier, is going to be tough. It'll be tough to make the playoffs out of that conference. But I think that they got the potential to go much further than just that. It looks to me, it has a look to me of, again, the team that Tom Brady had in Tampa where they don't need him to be Superman, but if he is Superman, again, they've got a chance to win the whole thing.
In terms of looking at our division, Green Bay obviously has a really good young quarterback they're paying $56 million to. How good is their roster around him?
I really like the Packers roster. Now, I think part of what you're going to be looking for from the Packers is some improvement in the scheme defensively. And, what I think is going to be a tell is like what they're getting out of Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary and Devontae Wyatt, all those guys up front, right? Like, so they got a bunch of high draft picks, well-paid guys on their front where, they felt like they weren't getting quite enough out of those guys. So now Jeff Hafley comes over from Boston College and is going to be putting in a much more aggressive scheme, one that's more like the San Francisco scheme, where guys are going to be getting upfield and into the backfield, right? So, like, are they able to get more out of, like, what I think is a pretty talented defense at the baseline, that way? And bringing over Xavier McKinney from the Giants should help as well. And then what I like about where they are offensively, guys, is just they have a bunch of players who are going to grow up together with Jordan Love, right? And it's Romeo Doubs and it's Christian Watson and it's it's Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. And it just, I don't know if there's a superstar in the group, but they've got really good balance among all of those players. They've done a good job developing offensive linemen. And then Josh Jacobs comes in as a guy who kind of be the head of the snake. And, it was interesting to me seeing some of the stuff out there on Jacobs this week where, the Chiefs had made a real run at him. And, I just think it's, I just think they're another one where you look at it and it's like, I don't know if they can shore up like the interior of their offensive line. I don't know if there's a real glaring hole on the roster. So, again, they look like a team that I think should be able to challenge the Lions in the NFC North. And I actually think, I think the North is probably the strongest division in the NFC right now. And one of the 2 or 3 strongest divisions in football, just because of the depth and, what the Bears can be and how I think Minnesota is going to be able to navigate some of the challenges ahead of them too.
What's hot on your phone right now? Something you haven't told anyone else?
Oh, geez. Well, I've been kind of buried in this quarterback poll hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you guys in Chicago a little something. Got a couple ballots with Kayla. So I do this every year. I think you guys know this, right? Right after the cut down before the season, so everybody has a full context for the offseason, I send out ballots and I say, give me your top 5 quarterbacks at the end of the year, right? Not the top 5 right now, who you think the top 5 quarterbacks are going to be at the end of the year. And I'm looking at my grid right now, and Mahomes is going to be a number 1, runaway number 1, obviously. Burrow, Allen, Jackson, those guys will be 2, 3, 4, I think, in some order. And then Stroud might actually wind up being number 5. Caleb Williams has landed on a couple ballots.
Wow.
So there you go. Caleb Williams has gotten on a couple ballots. So,
and this is executives telling you this?
I can say he's the only rookie that's shown up on any ballots, and he's gotten on a couple. I'm not saying he's going to get. I'm not saying he's shown up on 10 ballots or anything like that. But I think I have 59 in right now, and he's shown up on a couple of them. So, in this day and age, and with what there is in the league right now at quarterback, the fact that he's shown up on a couple of them, I think is a good sign for what people are seeing on tape and how, how they see the situation around him in Chicago too.
And this is executives and scouts in the league, coaches.
So yeah, it's basically what I try to do, Cap, is I try to it's got to be somebody who in some way touches the quarterback, right? So it's a head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, or people who evaluate them. So that'd be GM, pro scouting director, assistant general manager, director of player personnel. I send them out just to people who I think in some way are charged with evaluating quarterbacks, right? So it's a wide range of people, but whoever it is a relatively high level person who in one way or another, has evaluating quarterbacks on his plate.
Albert, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Have a good week.